Hey, True Believers, Chris Mack coming at you today with Uncanny X-Men 338. And this issue is Angel Reborn. Right off the bat, I have to say, guys, that I'm so thankful to finally have this comic in my collection. This was sort of the era of X-Men that I read, and where I was from, comic shops would come and go. Like, they'd pop up, you grab as many books as you could, it would shut down. And this happened numerous times, and I think to this day in my hometown there's not a dedicated comic shop. When Hastings was around, that was probably the closest that they got, and then of course Hastings shut down, which is still a sore subject for me. So anyway, I never really got to read a lot of these arcs in order. You grabbed what you could when you could, and when you went out of town and there was a comic shop, you always pillaged a lot. So being able to have this particular issue in my hands, I'm very, very happy. And the way they open it here is talking about how, this was Warren Worthington III. He's named after his father and his father's father. His family's wealth helps kind of make sure that there was no unnecessary hardships in his life. But of course, the juxtaposition of what you see in the panel, it says obviously it hasn't worked out that way. Because if you remember, the way Archangel became is his wings were basically beyond repaired, and after the fallout of the Mutant Massacre, they were amputated. He spiraled into depression, ended up teaming with Apocalypse, and that's how he was turned into the Archangel Death. So in this issue here, we're revisited with Ozymandias, which if you remember from the build-up in, Onslaught, blah, blah, blah. He visits Angel. He goes, "A name would mean nothing to you. It is enough for you to know I have served he who was once in Sabanur. Over the centuries, I have questioned the High Lord's wisdom. I have puzzled over his fascination with particular mutants he chose to focus his attention on. But you are the one over whom I argued with the Dark Lord. When he deemed you worthy of survival, I see now I was wrong. You are a survivor, Angel, just as Apocalypse always claimed you were." And just the way it builds up, the way Ozymandias comes and talks to him, he goes, "You recall the transformation into Archangel, the metal-winged horseman known as Death? That was only the beginning. Know this, O little mutant. The man who turns his kings into slaves, who takes away the gift of vision and replaces it with the curse of eternal sight, has smiled upon you." And so, spoiler alert if you have not read this. If you haven't, pause this video, go to your local comic shop, grab a copy. Now, moving forward, this is when Angel finally shed his metal wings and once again became Warren Worthington. In the instant before he passes out from the shock to his system, Warren Worthington realizes that after far, far too long, he is once again whole. The question that burns in his mind is, why? So as you see the look of elation on his face as he passes out, you can just see how relieved Angel is to be free of that burden of the the metal-winged angel of death. And then we jump into the story. And I had a hard time seeing Quicksilver like this with that quick, like Sonic the Hedgehog hair. Just very, very bad. But anyway, this is called Hope Reborn, Past Reclaimed. This is Scott Liddell writer, Joe Moderna and Salvador Lorca doing pencils, Tim Townsend and Vincent Russell inks, Richard Starkin and Comicraft letters, Steve Buccoletto and Team Buca colors, and Bob Harris was editor-in-chief. So here, as they're going through, you're kind of seeing this really look of hatred on Pietro's face. And the reason being is because this is when they took Joseph into the mansion, and everyone believes it to be Magneto. And I enjoyed Joseph. I thought the name was kind of silly. They should have maybe called him Lynch or just something, but I guess they were trying to make him separate from Magneto. But he's looking at a 3D rendering of himself in the danger room, and he goes, Jean, there's so much anger, so much hate in those eyes. My eyes. This is the man I used to be. You tell me, Joseph, what do you feel when you stare into that face? And while he's thinking, look at the eyes of that, the recording, he goes, nothing. Only a vast emptiness. And he goes, even though he's been given a second chance, he goes, I can't recall the sins of my past. Am I not destined to repeat them? It's good questions. I hate what they did with Joseph down the line, how they kind of explained him away and retconned him. I thought it would have been a great way, sort of like what Claremont was trying to do to Magneto. Because I remember when he came to our town, and as everyone went up to the booth, they were asking him questions about what he would have done if he would have stayed on X-Men. Now, if I'm wrong, feel free to correct me down in the comments, but I could have sworn he said something to the degree of that by issue 300, he wanted to kill Professor Xavier and have Magneto take over the team, which you kind of saw as Eric became the leader of the New Mutants. This would have been interesting to see, again, if Scott Liddell tried to pick up where Claremont left off, because at this point, Magneto, or Xavier's essentially been arrested because of the whole Onslaught incident. And so I would have loved to have seen that, but again, I hate how Marvel wanted to retcon, because it just, one thing that irks me about a lot of the, the big two, is they just can't commit to the bit and be brave enough to just go, okay, we're going to go there, because money and safety nets. Anyway, Betsy shows up and she says something's up with Warren. Now, I need to go back. I don't remember how, because they're talking about how Betsy almost died, and it was the Ceterit crystal that brought her and healed her wounds, which gave her that red mark on her eye, which I never knew that. But now she has these new abilities, which apparently she can phase through walls like Kitty. And everyone's like, just speechless. She goes, what are you staring at? Did I do something wrong? Because all she has in her mind is Warren. She's like, earlier today I went to Warren's apartment, and as you know, which I hate when people say as you know, they should have just said, I went to his room to see the recovery from the attack he had with Sabretooth, but when I got there, he was gone, except for this, which is a nice way to segue back into Angel. And I say, I should go see my friends, Betsy. I'm excited to see them, but for some reason I'm drawn here. And then the church kind of becomes the big crescendo of this book. We get Angel back. There's a really interesting fight with Pyro. And again, I don't know if Scott Liddell initially wanted to do with what happened with Joseph later on, but here he's getting wrapped in metal, and Pyro's like, "Here, Magneto, once. Now I'm the man who's going to crush you beneath that steel if you do not extinguish the flames." So you can see that sort of hatred of Eric Lensher in the voice of Joseph. But what makes this great is get past the ads. Logan just hauls off and smacks him. Back off, kid. We're not here to take him down. We're not here to take him down, Joseph. We're to take him down, not kill him if we don't have to. In another time and place, this young man would have killed Wolverine for less. That was a different time. I'm sorry, Wolverine. Despite the words I chose, I didn't mean to harm him. So I love the tone change of what they decided to retcon Magneto back to. If you go back and remember the hatred in the new X-Men book that came out in the early 90s, and then, of course, the Fatal Attractions from X-Men 25, it's just a lot of intensity. Now, one thing about this era of X-Men that I both loved and hated, if you'll kind of remember when I talk about other books where they'll kind of go, meanwhile, while this is going on, I felt like Marvel was throwing way too much at Scott Liddell, because he was trying to write his own little stories, like with Angel, with Jean, like all these little subtext stories, but they always kept getting overshadowed with Marvel wanting to do events. Heroes Reborn, Onslaught, Operation Zero Tolerance. Now, I will give Scott Liddell, because he carried the torch through this time when the comic industry was just getting ready to crash. And he did his best to keep up the legacy of what all the other writers had done, especially when others had jumped ship by this point. So Scott Liddell did a good job. It just chaps my ass that a lot of what he was wanting to do just kept getting overshadowed by corporate mandates, which I made a little funny subtext joke there. Ha ha ha. But guys, Uncanny X-Men 338, definitely a good read, especially the fact that Scott Liddell was respectful in the way that he brought Warren Worthington III back his feathery wings. That was a very awesome way to do it. And another thing about Scott Liddell is, while we're on the subject, I appreciate that he keeps everybody with their personalities in the way they're supposed to. I mean, Betsy's acting a little weird because there's something going on with her. But overall, Scott, Jean, Logan, they are in line with the way that their personalities are. They're not the Krakoan pod people that we currently have, just for lack of a better word. So guys, highly recommend this book. If you enjoyed what you've seen, please first and foremost support your local comic shop and pick up a copy. If you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that fancy little N7 or bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys get notified, come to the channel, and we love talking with you all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below or our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, thank you so much for stopping by. Hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.